All right, it's Saturday, February 8th, 2025, and Donald Trump and DOGE move on in to the Pentagon to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Shuttering USAID was important, firing tens of thousands of federal workers important, but the real waste, the real fraud is found in the defense and biopharma industries. And even mentioning an outside audit comes with like a whole slew of booby traps. Bottom line, it's dangerous, and the swamp of Washington, D.C. is fighting back as the Dem machine moves to freeze Elon and DOGE out of the West Wing after realizing finally that Elon is their number one enemy, threat number one. Also, an update on Tulsi and RFK Jr. One more day until the big vote, folks, as Senator John Fetterman breaks, caving to his party bosses. We'll explain what to expect on Monday, but before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Not even 3 full weeks in office, and Donald Trump's already delivered on more promises, accomplished more in less than 3 weeks than most presidents do in their entire terms, already saving U.S. taxpayers over $100 billion annually. And that's just the start. $100 billion in fraud and waste discovered after auditing just 1% of the federal government. $50 billion saved after shutting USAID, over $60 billion and counting from all the federal worker buyouts that have been accepted thus far. On Thursday, 2 days ago, DOGE sent out firing notices to 9,400 more USAID employees. Their headquarters now being occupied by Customs and Border Protection. All USAID employees gone. Their signage is being taped over, and they've only just begun. Trump posting on X yesterday, USAID is driving the radical left crazy, and there's nothing they can do about it because the way in which the money was spent, so much of it fraudulently, is totally unexplainable. The corruption is at levels rarely seen before. Close it down. Then during his summit with Japan's prime minister announcing next, Elon and DOGE will be moving into the Department of Education and the Pentagon. Watch.
If you look at what has just taken place with respect to some of the investments that have been made on another agency that people have been talking about for years, but nobody did anything about it, it's absolutely obscene, dangerous, bad, very costly. I mean, virtually every investment made is a con job. There's nothing of value to anybody unless there's a kickback scheme going on, which is possible. And we're going to be doing more and more of that. We're going to be looking at Department of Education. We're going to be looking at even our military. We're going to be looking at tremendous amounts of money, Peter, being spent on things that bear no relationship to anything and have no value. We're talking about trillions of dollars. It will be, in the end, trillions of dollars being absolutely wasted and perhaps illegally. I would say certainly in many cases illegally, but perhaps illegally overall.
Have you directed Elon Musk to review Pentagon spending, given it's the biggest discretionary spending
yes,
in the federal
budget? Yes, I have Pentagon, education, just about everything. We're going to go through everything, just as it was so bad with what we just went through with this horrible situation we just went through. And I guess 97% of the people have been dismissed. It was very, very unfortunate. You're not going to find anything like that, but you're going to find a lot, and I've instructed him to go check out education, to check out the Pentagon, which is the military, and, sadly, you'll find some things that are pretty bad, but I don't think proportionally you're going to see anything like we just saw.
If you thought USAID was bad, which it was, it is, USAID was the belly of the beast for Democrats. It was a giant Dem slush fund paid for by you, Mr. Taxpayer. It was built out more by the Biden administration, purposely set up outside of government to avoid oversight. And we found it. DOGE found it. And it's why you saw such an uproar from Dems last week, losing their minds. But that was only $50 billion a year. That's a drop in the bucket. The real corruption, the bulk of this spending isn't being spent on DEI parties in Peru. It's being laundered through the Defense Department, the defense and biopharma industries. Trump's promised $1 to $2 trillion will be cut. To do that, they need to get inside the Pentagon. Elon posting about it on X yesterday, saying It's a job for big balls, referring to his DOGE employee. The Defense Department is the most corrupt. And going after the Pentagon, Elon and DOGE going after the Pentagon is where things get dangerous. Hundreds of billions a year lost and siphoned off into these black projects protected by SAP and USAP clearances. SAP is special access programs, meaning no audits. Falls outside traditional congressional oversight. Oversight only legally allowed by a small handful of congressmen who sit on the Intel Committee, which they don't ever perform. Take a listen to Steve Bannon on why this is so critical yet so dangerous. Watch.
So the DOGE team, you're up the national, oceanographic, wherever the hell you're at, that's all good, do it. But until you cross the Potomac, it's not real. Until you cross the Potomac, this is like McClellan's army, right? Until you cross the Potomac and go over into Northern Virginia to the Pentagon and put a team, and hey, we'll get them as much, they don't need classifications and high security clearances to go through most of the budget. There are black programs, there are all that, yes, and you can get them. They should have them. If not, guess what? Maybe we round error that. Maybe we just round up to it. Let's get into the materials command. Let's get into the Pentagon is rife with incompetence. The Pentagon is rife with duplication. The Pentagon is rife with corruption. The defense industry is up to the eyeballs of corruption. Next to the biomedical industry in D.C., it's the most corrupt. The most corrupt. And so we're just going to sit there? You tell me we're just going to sit here? We're just going to sit here and not avoid that? And people that are putting out these Pete Heggs is the cover. No, Pete Heggs is not going to control. Pete Heggs got to run the building right now. And yes, he's got a budget. He's going to look at it. We're talking about DOGE. If you're not prepared to do it, just say you're not prepared to do it. If you're not prepared to do it because you got a conflict of interest, and that conflict of interest is your space company, SpaceX, fine, just tell us. And if the reason you don't want to do it is the financing you're doing on SpaceX, and I'd like to know the status of that financing. Has the financing closed? And is it built? I just like a simple thing. Has a financing closed recently? And was that financing around numbers that are in the NDAA of $900 billion? Inquiring minds, I'm asking for a friend. Let's stop the games and let's get down to, we're not going to cut the budget until we address the Pentagon. And if you think
So if you thought last week was bad, if you thought establishment Washington was up in arms over USAID being shut down, that was nothing. USAID was mostly just the woke nonsense. It's the cherry on top. The Defense Department has been wasting our money for more than 70 years, laundering it. The amount of corruption and waste inside the Pentagon would shock you to your core. And to get just a sense, just a taste of what's coming, listen to Mike Waltz, Trump's current national security advisor, talking about this last year in a congressional hearing. Watch this.
This, Mr. Secretary, is a bag of bushings. This bag of bushings, stamped out by machinists, they need a high school diploma. It's not anything high tech about this. All of this bag is compliant with the FAA specifications. How much do you think the Air Force pays for this bag of bushings?
I don't know, Congressman.
$90,000. This is a $90,000 bag of bushings that you need for any jet turbine engine just to operate. So the exorbitant cost due to DOD only buying commercial parts from the OEMs, which is essentially sole source, is literally driving us out of business. I mean, the interest on our debt alone is now exceeding, for the first time in American history, the entire defense budget. We can't afford it anymore.
They do that purposely. They're not paying $1,000 on the dollar by accident. It's how they wash and hide money for these secret projects. It's why they fail every internal audit they've ever had. This has been going on since the 50s. Remember what happened the last time a Republican administration tried to look into the Pentagon? Remember Donald Rumsfeld, defense secretary for Bush, admitting to trillions missing from the Pentagon back in 2001? Remember this?
We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. We cannot share information from floor to floor in this building because it's stored on dozens of different technological systems that are inaccessible or incompatible.
That was on September 10th, 2001. We all know what happened one day later, never hearing about the missing $2.3 trillion again. And the swamp is already fighting back. 14 states, I think now 18 states, filing a lawsuit against DOGE on Thursday. 18 state AGs from Dem states to stop Trump and Elon from accessing sensitive federal payment systems. The lawsuit being led by New York Attorney General Letitia James, of course, the same corrupt AG who charged Donald Trump last year for inflating the value of his properties. A complete sham of a case. Watch what she said.
In the past week, Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency have accessed the personal private information of tens of millions of Americans and sensitive data about public and private entities, Social Security numbers, addresses, tax returns, and more. This unelected group, led by the world's richest man, is not authorized to have this information, and they explicitly sought this unauthorized access to illegally block payments that millions of Americans rely on, and to uphold our Constitution. We have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration for giving unauthorized individuals access to these immensely sensitive records in violation of the law. President Trump does not have the power to give our private information away to whomever he wants. And he does not have the power to cut federal spending that Congress approved, much less to do so by giving the richest man in the world the keys to all Americans' most sensitive information. As Democratic Attorneys General, we are suing to stop this unprecedented and unauthorized attack and to protect your personal information.
Elon Musk responding to this, saying Letitia James wants the fraud and waste to continue. A federal judge ruling on the case this morning, Saturday morning, temporarily blocking DOGE from accessing the Treasury payment system and ordering DOGE to destroy any downloaded information they received since January 20th. A hearing is now scheduled for February 14th. To get around this, though, Scott Bessent, Trump's Treasury Secretary, he's enlisted 2 longtime Treasury employees to be given read-only access to the system instead of DOGE accessing it directly. So they're acting as like the intermediaries between the payment system and DOGE. In another story, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman came out yesterday opposing both RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard's confirmations. Posting on X Thursday night, I have met with most of the cabinet nominees and have carefully watched their confirmation hearings. After considering what's at stake, I have voted against moving forward to the confirmation of Ms. Gabbard and Mr. Kennedy and will be voting no on their confirmations. This is a big deal because Trump's been trying to cozy up to certain Dem senators, Fetterman being one of them, in the hopes of flipping their votes. The Senate is scheduled to vote on both RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard Monday, February 10th. Both of them secured enough votes in committee to bring their confirmations to a full Senate vote last week, which means we can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes. And we know Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins will all be voting no, so it's going to be close. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.